mystic poets. All right, well, just to get on the same page, mysticism. Of course, everybody knows what a mystic is, but it's always nice to have a definition. It says mysticism, broadly defined, is a state of sublime, imaginative, and spiritual experience in which one has direct, immediate, and intuitive perception of an all-embracing, infinite, and eternal reality. The immanent, transcendent, absolute being underlying and pervading, but also transcending the sensible material universe. It is the sense of God in all and all in God. It is this sense of one ultimate divine principle permeating all things and all life of the universe, as well as guiding, cherishing, and sustaining them, that inspires the mystic to conceive the vision of the ultimate divine unity of the universe, of all life. Mystic imagination sees a living relationship between the soul of man and the soul of the universe, a vision of cosmic unity, fraternity, and fellowship. Now, I think in general that's a great definition. I suspect that this was written by a humanities major and not a monk, since his regular, or he or she's regular reference to the imagination, the mystic imagination, sees a living relationship. And so, and that all, the beginning up there is that it's defined as a state of sublime, imaginative, and spiritual experience. So I'm not sure they're fully on board with the realization of the mystics, with this non-experience experience that they have. But of course, you always run into that trouble, because this realization, this spiritual experience, it's never something that's easily put into words. It's not something that's subject to object related. And so lots of times when the mystics talk about it, it's in a way that really, if you haven't been around the philosophy, you really don't have anything to attach it to. So really the imaginative or the dream world is probably one of the closest things you could reference for it. William Wordsworth, though, in his nature-oriented poetry, is just beautiful in that he mixes the two into one. He really maintains that idea of one without a second. And his seeing of the divine and the experience of nature, he just kind of slides through it at different levels in his poetry, as we'll see. And I was attracted to it and wanted to share it because I think it's a beautiful way of actually being. It's a wonderful description of what it is to see God in all things and to live a life worshiping through everything, worshiping by the way you live, worshiping everything like karma yoga, to worship with whatever is in front of you, with whatever you are doing, not in a ritualistic set of functions, but in taking the practical and using it in the spiritual context, which I think is what real life is. I think a life properly lived is very close to what Wordsworth is going to share today. It says, Wordsworth's mystical experiences are mainly depicted in the context of his treatment of nature. He had never limited his poems within the confined boundaries of the sights, sounds, odors, and movements of various elements of nature. His aim was to attain something ultra-earthly and divine, and leaving the traces of his mystical experiences in nature and human life in his poetry. So again, just this idea of not being able to look at nature as something material, of not being able or not willing to see a separation. So it's not that nature reminds him of God, it's that nature has almost been the language of God for him. It's been the experience of the divine surrounding him. And he doesn't talk about his mystical experiences as separate things that happen to him. He describes them and points at them and kind of hints at them in the way that he uses nature in his poetry. And as you'll see here, it's quite beautiful. This poem, the major one that we'll look at today, is called Tintern Abbey. It's a very long poem and just delightful. It's a place that he went to on regular occasions through his life. And he grew in his relationship with it, very much in the same way many of us might have grown in a relationship with the divine. And you'll see it. I tried to highlight the areas where I found the best hints in red. So we'll look at those closely as we go through, as we read it here. So he starts, 5 years have passed, 5 summers, with the length of 5 long winters, and again I hear these waters, rolling from their mountain springs with a soft inland murmur. Once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs, that on a wild, secluded scene impress thoughts of more deep seclusion, and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. The day is come when I again repose here, under this dark sycamore, and view these plots of cottage ground, these orchard tufts, which at this season, with their unripe fruits, are clad in one green hue, and lose themselves mid groves and copses. Once again I see these hedgerows, hardly hedgerows, little lines of sportive wood run wild, these pastoral farms, green to the very door, and wreaths of smoke sent up in silence from among the trees, with some uncertain notice, as might seem of vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods, or of some hermit's caves where by his fire the hermit sits alone. So you see his mixing with the external world and the internal world. This idea, this marriage between the landscape and the quiet of the sky. To me, that's that linking of the external world with our internal world. The quiet of the sky is the stillness of the soul. And this beautiful walk in this quiet, natural area. He says that this wild, secluded scene impresses thoughts of a more deep seclusion, that inner seclusion, that inner world, the unchanging, ever free, ever pure inner self that is the very battery of our experience, the battery of our being. And so he's been gone for 5 years since he's walked in this place, and he comes and immediately is reminded of that silence and that quiet, the temple outside, referring to the temple inside. And even in his words, the hermit's cave, seeing that even though there are cottages and fields with these hedgerows, which have now overgrown, and that the doors, the wreaths of smoke coming up through the trees from these houses hidden beneath them. And he again goes to the wandering monk, the vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods. You can't help but think of the sadhus roaming in the Himalayas, or this great tradition of vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods of some hermit's cave, where by his fire the hermit sits alone. And he in the scene, I think, is that hermit sitting alone in his cave, which is being reflected in this beautiful place around him. These beauteous forms, through a long absence, have not been to me as a landscape to a blind man's eye, but oft in lonely rooms and mid the din of towns and cities, I have owed to them, in hours of weariness, sensations sweet, felt in the blood and felt along the heart, and passing even into my purer mind with tranquil restoration, feelings too of unremembered pleasures, such perhaps as have no slight or trivial influence on that best portion of a good man's life, his little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. Nor less, I trust, to them I may have owed another gift, of aspect more sublime, that blessed mood in which the burthen of the mystery, in which the heavy and the weary weight of all this unintelligible world is lightened, that serene and blessed mood in which the affections gently lead us on, until the breath of this corporeal frame, and even the motion of our human blood almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body and become a living soul, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. It's wonderful that talking about that his time away from these woods is not seeing a landscape as to a blind man's eye, as if it's something that he can only imagine, as if it was some thing that had no real experiential relationship with him. But he says, no, I took this beautiful wilderness, I took this language of the divine into the middle of the towns and the cities, and I have owed to them in the hours of my weariness, and even in the sensation sweet, I felt in the blood and felt along in the heart, and passing even into my purer mind with tranquil restoration, feelings of unremembered pleasures, such perhaps as have no slight or trivial influence on that best portion of a good man's life, suggesting that the root of this experience, the root of this experience of the shrine, the inner shrine outside, that is what has brought to him the ability to manifest this self that comes out so naturally and manifests in little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. So something distinct from ego, distinct from timeline, distinct from a doing that you want to take credit for or that you would remember, but that he has held this beautiful memory or thought or awareness of this external shrine that he has found, that he has linked to the internal space, so that when he's not there, he has all of its advantages. And he says here that it has lifted this weary weight of all this unintelligible world, this world of confusion, the world of ignorance, Maya. It's lightened that serene and blessed mood in which the affections gently lead us on, that devotional longing, that scent of pure love that we feel ever so timidly in our meditations and in the inspirations, that I understand what he's talking about when you walk into the mountains up in Rocky Mountain National Park, just that serene and blessed mood that just awakens into you an awe and a love, an understanding of the divine. He says, until the breath of this corporeal frame and even the motion of our human blood almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body. So the body falls away as we begin to see and are taken into this transcendence of this natural beauty, these majestic and silent and holy and sacred spaces, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony. That's the one I love. This power of harmony, when you get out into nature and you see that the trees twist around each other, bend with the wind, and if the wind is constant, they stay in that position. The mountains, just everything growing around each other, making room for each other, just doing as it goes. And that we are that almost suspended, we are laid unaware of this in body, become that spirit, that living soul. Just an amazing way of talking about it. While with an eye made quiet, by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Swamiji, I had a teacher in college, a biology teacher here in Portland. He took us to the coast, and we stopped by on the way to the coast and went. And he just said to us, "This is my cathedral." It was, and I remembered that. He said, "This is what I worship." And then we were looking under rocks and streams and found all these wonderful little animals. And yeah, it's a cathedral. And it lifts up our spirit, and it's the oneness.
It is. It's amazing.
Swamiji.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so much more deeply experienced. Like if you go out there with no thought of the divine, it's beautiful and it will call you into it, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feed you in the same
Mm-hmm.
way. When it's seen as divine, when it's seen as manifestation, it's clear that that's what Wordsworth is experiencing because it's from inside. You know, he has it linked with his
Mm-hmm.
reality. It's quite lovely. And, here in a little bit, I'm very excited about what he talks about toward the end of the poem
Sure,
because
sure,
I think
sure.
it talks a beautiful relationship that
Good.
has grown over time. Let's see here.
Mm-hmm.
If this be but a vain belief, yet oh, how oft, in darkness and amid the many shapes of joyless daylight, when the fretful stir unprofitable and the fever of the world have hung upon the beatings of my heart, how oft in spirit have I turned to thee, O sylvan Wye, thou wanderer through the woods, how often has my spirit returned to thee? So he uses it. I mean, it's his scripture. You see, I think that that's a very valid perspective that this world is scripture to the seer. One of my favorite ideas that I've stumbled upon in Vedanta is that we live in the scriptures, that it's from this moment that the Bhagavad Gita was condensed, that the Tao was condensed, that the Bible was condensed, that it's from this moment, the crystallization, this idea that the Vedas are not, by the Vedas, Vivekananda says, by the Vedas are not meant a set of books, that the Vedas are the truth of reality. So if you can take this moment, this reality, and convert it into text, it becomes a scripture. And so someone who lives in that dialogue with the divine, lives in that dependence on the divine, the world becomes your scripture. It becomes the thing that teaches you, the thing that warns you, the thing that enlightens you. It's an amazing, amazing richness to it. And
And
now,
Swami,
yes,
excuse me.
please,
Sorry.
please.
Swami Sheshananda, I have memories. I met him when I was 17. Visitor that would come, we had to go to the Oregon coast to Swami would come and we'd walk out on the cliffs and he would just start talking that this was the manifestation of God. It was just beautiful, it'd be just rain. He'd be in his little jacket that Swami gave him, but boy, we had to go out there and then we would come back into town and he out to Mount Hood. And that was Shiva. Mount Hood was Shiva.
Yes.
Rain, snow, whatever, center. And he had to go to court to testify, talk about why we wanted the nonprofit status, and
Hmm.
the courtroom was silent. And here's this man standing up, Swami, of course, talking about how every single tree is God. And of course, they gave us the nonprofit status, but he blew everybody away in the courtroom. Isn't that
Hmm.
precious?
Yes. Oh,
Wonderful.
yes.
Yeah.
That's why
He
the
was a character.
Swamis.
You
Yeah.
would have
Oh,
loved him.
I would have loved him. I've seen video of him and just, oh my gosh, what a power he had. And everybody who talks about him, just such a child of the
Yeah,
mother.
it was, yeah,
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. That's
so
cool.
loving and so kind. And yeah, oh, he was, yeah, just, I mean, to me, he was a father. I'll never forget it. So anyway, you and Greg would have really just, you know, he would just love this. And he loved poetry. We all poetry and art and everything. So anyway, sorry.
No,
this
it's
brings him
wonderful.
this brings him up for me. Isn't that interesting, you all? I think about him and I have some pictures of him at the coast that I'll try to send you that
Oh,
are
good.
very real. You can feel exactly this.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'd love
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Surely. And now, with gleams of half extinguished thought, with many recognitions dim and faint, and somewhat of a sad perplexity, the picture of the mind revives again. While I stand here, not only with the sense of present pleasure, but with pleasing thoughts that in this moment there is life and food for future years. So he knows that he's storing up, for those times when he's away, when he's no longer there in the midst of this temple. That just the experience and the connection with the interior is going to carry him forward with life and food for thought for many, many years. And so I dare to hope, though changed, no doubt, from what I was when I first came among these hills, when like a roe I bounded over the mountains, by the sides of the deep rivers and the lonely streams, wherever nature led, more like a man flying from something that he dreads than one who sought the thing he loved. For nature then, the coarser pleasures of my boyish days, and the glad animal movements, all gone by, to me was all in all. I cannot paint what then I was. The sounding cataract haunted me like a passion. The tall rock, the mountain, and the deep and gloomy wood, their colors and their forms were then to me an appetite, a feeling and a love that had no need of a remoter charm by thought supplied, nor any interest unborrowed from the eye. That time is past, and all its aching joys are now no more, and all its dizzy raptures. Not for this faint I, nor mourn, nor murmur. Other gifts have followed. For such loss I would believe abundant recompense. This is drawing it's framing such a beautiful event that I think happens in the spiritual life of every individual. It's when it's the ending of the night of the dark night of the soul. It's when you come for the first time to actually feel the presence of the divine, and when that actually becomes your inspiration, it actually becomes your refuge for the first time. He says here, in the beginning, this beautiful place, it was a place outside of himself, a place where he was going to get something from, that it was the external world, and he was enraptured by the beauty, but he wanted more of it, where does he say there, like a roe, like a deer in heat, running frenetically to grab experience and to grab pleasure and to grab joy and grab diversion from this beauty that's all around him. And he says, though, that the coarser pleasures of my boyish days and their glad animal movements, all gone by, to me was all in all. To me, back then, that was everything. That is youth, right? I mean, that experience, that partying, that joy, the sounding cataract haunted me like a passion. Why? Because when you see the world like that, you can never have enough. Its beauty becomes a haunting. It's a craving that cannot be matched. And the deep and gloomy wood, their colors, their forms were then to me an appetite, a hunger, a need, a feeling, and a love that had no need of a remoter charm. So they were what they were, but they were something that was causing the need for more, the hunger for more, the thirst for more. But he says all of that is gone now. And he says, but I don't faint over it. I don't mourn or murmur about it, because the gifts that have followed for such loss, I would believe abundant recompense. This wonderful thing.
Exactly.
And here he steps into that. To look on nature, not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, though of ample power to chasten and subdue. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit, that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and the mountains, and of all that we behold from this green earth, of all the mighty world of eye and ear, both what they half create and what perceive, well pleased to recognize in nature and the language of the sense the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul, of all my moral being.
Mm.
That's what a beautiful, beautiful way of existing in the midst of all of this, that the world itself, becomes that anchor of your purest thoughts. The nurse, that which heals you, resuscitates you, reminds you of hope and beauty and love, and the guide, giving you direction, giving you teaching, which he talks about up at the beginning. He says that it has ample power to chasten and subdue. And that's that harmony that he pointed at earlier in the poem. That's what nature does for us. When I talk about nature, I like to say it's completely devoid of the right angles of ego. It's like you step into the cities,
I
that's the
like
world
that
of
one.
man, and everything's right angles and squares and harshness and forcing its existence, against nature. The buildings are a defiance of nature. If they were left to their own, they would crumble, but in nature, nothing is left to crumble, and when it does crumble, it crumbles at the feet of the living to nourish and start the generation again. So it's just quite lovely. I think that's
Was he
that's
considered a transcendentalist the way Whitman was?
yes.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, he is one of the
Oh, okay.
transcendentalists. Yeah.
Okay.
Nor perchance, if I were not thus taught, should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay. For thou art with me here upon the banks of this fair river, thou, my dearest friend, my dear, dear friend. And in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart, and read my former pleasures in the shooting lights of thy wild eyes. Oh, yet a little while may I behold in thee what I was once, my dear, dear sister, and this prayer I make, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. 'Tis her privilege, through all the years of this our life, to lead from joy to joy, for she can so inform the mind that is within us, so impress with quietness and beauty, and so feed with lofty thoughts, that neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of daily life, shall e'er prevail against us, or disturb our cheerful faith, that all which we behold is full of blessings. Therefore let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary walk, and let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against thee. And in after years, when these wild ecstasies shall be matured into sober pleasure, when thy mind shall be a mansion for all lovely forms, thy memory be as a dwelling place for all sweet sounds and harmonies. Oh, then, if solitude or fear or pain or grief this ah let me sorry, I got this. It doesn't give me a mouse and yet it stands in the way of everything. Here we go. For all the sweet sounds and harmonies, oh, then if solitude or fear or peace or grief. So it's just this place that nature is true.
Mm-hmm.
You see him giving to nature the qualities of God, which is
Yes, definitely.
exactly what we
Hmm.
are practicing to do. You know, that
Exactly.
we see God in everything and all around us. And that the result of this, the end result of that relationship, of that dance through a life, through the life in the body, on these last days of living. He says, therefore, let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary walk, and let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against you. This is that acceptance, the acceptance of your solitary walk, the seeing everything as perfect in its moment and in its place. Let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against you. And in after years, closing of life, when these wild ecstasies shall be matured into sober pleasures, when your mind shall be a mansion for all lovely forms, that pure mind, that mind where you see things as they are, you see God. You're no longer imagining, no longer practicing. You're walking with, you're full of. And your memory will be as a dwelling place for all the sweet sounds and
Hmm.
harmonies. Oh, then, if solitude or fear or pain or grief should be thy portion, with what healing thoughts of tender joy wilt thou remember me and these my exhortations? Nor perchance, if I should be where I no more can hear thy voice, nor catch from thy wild eyes these gleams of past existence, wilt thou then forget that on the banks of this delightful stream we stood together, and that I, so long a worshipper of nature, hither came unwearied in that service? Rather say with warmer love, oh, with far deeper zeal of holier love. Nor wilt thou then forget that after many wanderings, many years of absence, these steep woods and lofty cliffs, and this green pastoral landscape were to me more dear, both for themselves and for thy sake. So that beautiful song,
Just beautiful.
you know, there. It's
Beautiful, Swami.
yeah, yeah, wonderful. It's just it's really at the center of practice. It's the whole,
Uh,
it's still manifestation, it's still subject, object, all of that's true. And yet to walk with God, is I think the highest ideal. Is a wonderful verse in Micah that says, what is it that God requires of man but to enjoy his work and to walk humbly with his God? That's all that is required. And it's the
mhm.
requirement is a gift in and of itself. That we're not, oh, just that hardcore edge to worldly religion that makes it seem like it's all about discipline and denial and self-abnegation and all the hard things, that are only hard when you are mistakenly thinking that there's a value in their maintenance, that there's a value in that attachment. That all of this really is for our fullest experience of being, that our religion, our spiritual life, is for the nurturing and sustenance of everyone, that we, like nature, will be creatures of perfect harmony, that we will bend and twist with each other and nurture each other in our living and our memory when we're gone. This is the hope of it. All right, let's look at Walt Whitman.
Beautiful, Swami. Just beautiful.
So this is just a statement from Walt Whitman. There is in sanest hours a consciousness, a thought. Oops. There is Just trying to move that window again. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There is in sanest hours a consciousness, a thought that rises, independent, lifted out from all else, calm, like the stars, shining eternal. This is the thought of identity, yours for you, whoever you are, as mine for me. Miracle of miracles, beyond statement, most spiritual and vaguest of earth's dreams, yet hardest basic fact, and only entrance to all facts. In such devout hours, in the midst of the significant wonders of heaven and earth, significant only because of the me in the center, creeds, conventions, fall away and become of no account before this simple idea. Under the luminousness of real vision, it alone takes possession, takes value. Like the shadowy dwarf in the fable, once liberated and looked upon, it expands over the whole earth and spreads to the roof of heaven. That notion that this mystery is identity, this being, this isness. The funny thing is, we have this gift, this ability that we don't even recognize as actually an ability. This ability to attach and identify with anything we touch, to actually become that thing. And really, in realization, that's exactly what we do then. We expand to the thing itself, as he says here, we expand over the whole earth that spreads to the very roof of heaven. When that sense of ego self, that still is a miracle, still is a wonder, that we can take something completely foreign to us, something completely limited and small and tiny, and completely identify with it and love it fully and be it fully. It is an amazing thing. The fact that every night when you dream, you step into a different world. You take on a different body. You take on a different identity. You forget your memories and you become something brand new. And then in the morning, you wake up and boom, you again take on this body, a new identity, a new set of memories. And how easily we can just brush from one set to another theater, from one to the next without any stress of brokenness or breaking. It's how easily this I that is our nature, this I in its full expansion, how easily it can just wander from stage to stage and fully accept and become what it sees itself to be, what it thinks itself to be. That in that self, though there is pain and suffering in it, the play happens in that space. It's still the wonder of this existence, of this perception, subject and object, breaking ourselves into these pieces, to experience them fully, to become them fully, to know their nature fully. And as we grow and as we approach that place, that final breaking into that beauty, into that transcendence, and that expansion that fills everything. Finally, my children, to envelop each word, each part of the rest, Allah is all, 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 is immanent in every life and object, maybe at many and many a more removes, yet Allah is there. As a stray wandered far, is the reason why strangely hidden. Would you sound below the restless ocean of the entire world? Would you know the dissatisfaction, the urge and spur of every life, the something never stilled, never entirely gone, the invisible need of every seed? It is the central urge in every atom, often unconscious, often evil, downfallen, to return to its divine source and origin, however distant, latent the same in subject and in object, without one exception. He's just talking about that inner drive to know ourselves, to know our nature, to understand things, the central urge in every atom. Vivekananda, when he talks about that, he says he names it. Vivekananda says the central urge in every atom is love. That it's love that keeps the planets circling the sun, and love that keeps the neutrons and electrons circling the center of the atom. So that is the central urge in every atom, often unconscious, often evil, downfallen. It's what has become everything. To return to its divine source and origin, thus eliminating the evil and downfallen unconsciousness. It returns to the divine source, however distant, which means it's destiny. We will return. Latent, the same in subject and object. So the division, the division is make-believe, myself and the other. And there are no exceptions. All right, so that's it. That's all I did for Walt Whitman.
Oh, is that what you did with Walt Whitman, Swami?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
That was one poem by Walt Whitman there.
Oh, okay. I have a 1931 edition of Leaves of Grass from my father that I'm looking through. That I'm with his signature. My father's dead, but yeah, it's beautiful. I may share some poems with you.
Oh, please.
But,
yes,
as a little girl, he exposed me to poetry, and he was an extraordinary man. And we would sit, and he would read me, the Leaves of Grass. Here's an old edition. So anyway,
that's great that you have an old
I'll
edition.
share with you later.
He kept revising it.
Yeah, 1931. Boy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll do Rumi here. Maybe Hafiz. I just have some very short poems from these guys, but both Rumi and Hafiz are the mystical aspect of Islam. Some of the most beautiful poetry I've read, actually. And so Rumi, these pains you feel are messengers. Listen to them. That goes right along with Sri Nisargadatta's statement. All pain is a sign of inquiry or a call to inquiry. Learn from them. Listen to them. Undressing. Learn the alchemy true human beings know. The moment you accept what troubles you've been given, the door will open. Welcome difficulty as a familiar comrade. Joke with torment brought by the friend. Sorrows are the rags of old clothes and jackets that serve to cover and then are taken off. That undressing and the naked body underneath is the sweetness that comes after grief.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, this fortitude, I just read this morning, Ramakrishna saying, fortitude is the greatest of all virtues, and Holy Mother echoes that. And fortitude is that acceptance of everything perfectly as it is. No resistance, in the words of Eckhart Tolle, non-resistance, not pushing against the moment. And I like what he says when he says, don't just accept the moment. Lean into it, love the moment as it is. And the only way we can possibly do that is to see the moment as divine, as God, that we could embrace it that way. Entrance door. How lover and beloved touch is familiar and courteous, but there is a strange impulse in that to create a form that will dissolve all other shapes. Remember, the entrance door to the sanctuary is inside you. We watch a sunlight dust dance, but nobody knows what music those particles hear. Each of us has a secret companion musician to dance to. Unique rhythmic play, a motion in the street that we alone know and hear. I realized when I first read that we watch a sunlight dust dance, when the sunbeams come in the window and you just see all those little pieces of dust moving and floating around. I love the idea that he has an imagined musical accompaniment, to know that everything dances to this silent music, even ourselves, that this love that is within us, this love that is our nature, silent, still, and unchanging, still causes us to dance this life, just that we move in response to the divine will. And one day we'll hear that sound of beauty and know that divinity and understand our movement finally. Rabindra, I forgot I put Rabindranath in here this morning. Have you ever read his book, the Gitanjali? Quite
No.
a wonderful.
Is it good?
It is really good. I quite often pick something out of. He's Bengali.
It's his book called. Yeah. Oh, he is. His book called what? Patanjali?
Gitanjali. It's there in the paragraph. I also have a copy of it over here.
Gitanjali. Okay.
Yeah. Rabindranath Tagore.
Was he a contemporary of Ramakrishna or?
Yes. Actually, he was. Yeah.
Oh, Gitanjali. Yeah. Gitanjali. I see that. He became
Gitanjali. Not Gitanjali.
He became, the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize in literature. Cool. Okay.
A fleeting touch. When she passed by me with quick steps, the end of her skirt touched me. From the unknown island of a heart came a sudden warm breath of spring. A flutter of a flitting touch brushed me and vanished in a moment, like a torn flower petal blown in the breeze. It fell upon my heart, like a sigh of her body and a whisper of her heart. I don't, it's to me it would be the touch of the Divine Mother. He's a Bengali, deeply in there. But either whatever it is, even if it's the touch of a woman in this sense, this pulling or what do you call it, abstracting out the experience from the thing. Wonderful. From the unknown island of a heart, that unknown unchanging self within. Once again, just a direct reference to this island of the heart, this thing that is somehow unchanged and unaffected, untouchable and complete, that's separate and apart from all of this constant change and flight. That from this unknown island, see, all movement of love in this active universe, in the universe of the change, all of it comes as a sudden warm breath of spring from this unknown island of a heart. Everything originates here. All beauty originates here. All love originates here. All wisdom originates here within us. It's not a product of that unknown outside. It's that sudden expression of this divine touch, this fleeting touch, as this imagined reality brushes against our awareness. A flutter of a flitting touch brushed me and vanished in a moment. That's the changing world. Something in there touches us, reminds us of this divinity, reflects this divinity to us, like a torn flower petal blown in the breeze. It's partial, it's not complete, but it carries with it the suggestion of the whole. A flower petal, you see it, you automatically think of the flower. It's that association. And so this brushing of the material world, the changing world against this island of a heart, and suddenly we have within us this sigh and whisper of the heart, this remembrance, this hint, this thought of the divine, before it's broken and separated into its manifold pieces. Just wonderful how he takes that experience. The Poet in Me, Part 1. I thought that my voyage had come to its end at the last limit of my power, that the path before me was closed, that provisions were exhausted and the time come to take shelter in a silent obscurity. But I find that thy will knows no end in me. And when old words die out on the tongue, new melodies break forth from the heart, and where the old tracks are lost, new country is revealed with its wonders. This notion, one thing that Swami Brahmananda, when he said that spiritual life begins at Nirvikalpa Samadhi, this notion that, and it's one of the most beautiful thoughts that I like to meditate on, is this notion that the love of God cannot be known, that you will never know the love of God like it's a thing done and explored, finished, but that from now forever, that love will increase in size, increase in depth, increase in your understanding of it, that you will literally fall in love again and again and again and again forever. That this is the notion of God. And he says here that even though I thought my voyage had come to its, he's reaching his old age and thinking that there's just that the path before him is closed, death is the blocking door. That provisions were exhausted and the time come to take shelter in that silent obscurity. But I find that thy will knows no end in me, right? It is the divine will that knows your immortality, your forever nature. And so that youth of life continues all the way up until the body drops. We in ourselves will never be old. You talk to any old person and they will all tell you that inside, I don't feel any different than I did as a young girl or as a young man. And even now I know that I can remember me in my 7-year-old body, driving past the cornfields. I can remember me back then when I was thinking and longing to be a teenager, and I remember the experience of I has always been the same. And it's one of the greatest proofs we have of our separateness from body and mind. One of the greatest proofs we have of an unchanging divinity that's forever with us. But and even in those days when we are elderly and confined to a chair in a single room, and the old words die out on the tongue, new melodies break forth from the heart, and where the old tracks are lost, new country is revealed with its wonders. That changing in life. I remember when I first passed that marker where I woke up one day and laying there staring at the ceiling, the thought occurred to me, God, I have less life in front of me now than I have behind me. And that made such a difference in the way that I lived and the way that I thought about things. I realized for my full half of my first part of life, I lived in the future. Everything was being prepared for something ahead. What was I going to do when I grew up? What was I going to be when I get old? And then you get there and you've done what you're going to do. I remember waking up in the monastery and thinking, wow, all those childhood dreams aren't what happened. This is what happened. This is what I've become. This is what I am. And that acceptance of that, no sorrow for that, much like Walt Whitman, not by Wordsworth, not feeling any sorrow in that, but understanding this new depth, this new perspective, as the temporary nature of the world becomes radically clear to us, when the end of time becomes radically visible to us, that within that there's a whole new world of being, a whole new understanding about what's important and what we are. What divine drink wouldst thou have, my God, from this overflowing cup of my life? My poet, is it thy delight to see thy creation through my eyes, and to stand at the portals of my ears silently, to listen to thine own eternal harmony? Thy world is weaving words in my mind, and thy joy is adding music to them. Thou givest thyself to me in love, and then feelest thine own entire sweetness in me. This this is it. This is the thing right here. to live in that awareness. That is what we're talking about every time we say, live in the presence. This is what we're talking about, to have the constant, unbroken thought of God. This is the fruit of a mantra. To be able to know this to be the truth, that it is divine love living its life through you, that your imagined ego, which is just the reflection of the divine self within time-space causation, enjoys itself. But the self that it's enjoying is not the part that's reflected in time-space causation, but it's that which is being reflected. When your reflected self becomes aware of what is being reflected, that the reflected side is not the real side, but that unchangeable self within is the real side. And this intimacy that happens at that point, this immeasurable depth that comes to understanding at that point. When he says, through my eyes, and to stand at the portals of my ears, silently to listen to thine own eternal harmony. Thy world is weaving words in my mind, and your joy is adding music to them. Thou gives thyself to me in love, and then feel your own entire sweetness in me. That's the ecstasy that Ramakrishna kept experiencing, you know, feel that love. All right, and Hafiz, we'll just do a short one. He's best known for his poems that can be described as antinomian, and with the medieval use of the term theosophical, the term theosophy in the 13th and 14th century was used to indicate mystical work by authors only inspired by holy books, as distinguished from theology. Hafiz primarily wrote in the literary genre of lyric poetry, or ghazals, that is, the ideal style for expressing the ecstasy of divine inspiration in the mystical form of love poems. The Woman I Love, I think this is the only one I have for him. Because the woman I love lives inside of you, I lean as close to your body with my words as I can. And I think of you all the time, dear pilgrim, because the one I love goes with you wherever you go. Hafiz will always be near. If you sat before me, wayfarer, with your aura bright from your many charms, my lips could resist rushing to you and needing to befriend your blushed cheek, but my eyes can no longer hide the wondrous fact of who you really are. The beautiful one whom I adore has pitched his royal tent inside of you, so I will always lean my heart as close to your soul as I can.
Beautiful.
Oh, there is one more, sorry. Because of our wisdom. In many parts of this world, water is scarce and precious. People sometimes have to walk a great distance, then carry heavy jugs upon their heads. Because of our wisdom, we will travel far for love. All movement is a sign of thirst. Most speaking really says, I am hungry to know you. Every desire of your body is holy. Every desire of your body is holy. Dear one, why wait until you are dying to discover that divine truth? Yes.
Swamiji, is this from the book that you said the man took some liberties to translate, or is this a closer translation? Or you know what I'm saying? I have the book.
This one is from the subject tonight is love. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But this knowledge, this idea of every desire of your body is holy, it's became one of my favorite things because it's pointing at the pure mind, which understands that everything that we do is an expression of love, an expression of God. And that all of our desires have that one seed in them, that they are our quest for God, but we have assigned his qualities to objects and run after the objects instead. But that the reality of it is this holy desire for God, this longing for oneness. So
It's beautiful, just beautiful.
all right.